Welcome everyone to Courage Pays Better Than Fear market review and preview. Today is Saturday, July 12th. The market doesn't open for another 2 days. July 14th, that'll be Monday. But we need to get prepared for what's coming this week, and it's all going to start with the big data that we're going to get. And I'm going to look at the calendar view here in my trading view, and you can see that we are going to get CPI on Tuesday, July 15th. And whether or not that data comes in hot or cool is going to dictate where the market heads next. And we're going to take a look at the charts to see what things look like heading forward. But you would have to think if we have an uptick in inflation, which is what the forecast is, that'll put some downward pressure on the markets. A cooler report, then we could see the opposite. And then when we come over to Wednesday, what do we get that follows CPI? Yes, we get PPI, the producer price index. That is supposed to be a tick higher as well at 0.2 versus 0.1. Again, a hotter read. You think that's going to put pressure down on the markets, but a cooler read, and we could see a little bit more of a move higher. So just have that circled on your calendars. That needs to be on your radar. We do have some Fed speakers there on Wednesday as well. And then when we come over to Thursday, we do get initial jobless claims that people will be paying attention to, but really it's going to be about retail sales month over month. We'll be looking to see what that data is, to see if consumers are making purchases, and that gives some insight into the health of the economy and the consumer. Again, some more Fed speakers. And then when we come over to Friday, we not only have options expiration, so that's going to be important to note, but we also have building permits, we have housing starts, and then we also have Michigan consumer sentiment. Quite a bit of data. And oh yeah, what else is happening is we get major earnings that kick off this week. And it's going to start with the big banks here on Tuesday, the 15th. We're going to get JP Morgan's reporting before market open. Wells Fargo is going to be reporting, Citigroup, BlackRock. So everybody is paying attention to what these big banks have to say, and the financials have been really leading the charge in this bull run that we've been having. So we want to see what forward guidance says, what they have to say about profits for these banks. But we're also going to get is ASML is going to report on Wednesday, and that's going to give us some insight into the health of the chip market. So if ASML reports positively, we can see some more strength come into the chip market. So have that circled on your calendars as well. And again, more banks. And then when we come to Thursday, this is one I'm really excited about. I'm going to have a separate video for this so you could check that out. Netflix is reporting on Thursday. So that's going to be a fun one to watch to see how they report. They've been pulling back the last 2 weeks here. You would have to think a split comes into play, but this is shaping up to be a tumultuous week. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're just going to hop right in here to the SPX to take a look at where we are. And you can see that we finished this week. I'm on the weekly chart here on the SPX with a dragonfly doji candle. So there is some indecision, and really we've just been sideways after last week's all-time high. We did make an all-time high here this week, but it's just moving along sideways. And while we did get some weakness coming to the market on Friday, the market has been pretty resilient and has held up pretty strong. And flipping over to that daily, we could see that yesterday we did sell down just a little bit, but not too much. But these bulls are holding strong. You can see the volume is hanging in there. We're not overbought on the weekly, so there could be some more continuation, some more upside here before this one drops. I wouldn't be surprised to see some selling heading into the CPI report, or maybe we'll blast off on Monday and then a hot CPI PPI drags us down, and then we get some more enthusiasm or optimism, some buying later. Keep in mind the end of July from a seasonality perspective tends to be weak and sets us up for a weak August, September, and October where things tend to bottom, and then November starts the best 6 months in the stock market. So just keep that in mind. If we take a look at the Qs, you can see a similar type of setup here. Really, we got a spinning top candle, and that is almost inside. It's not fully inside. We did make a new all-time high on the Qs, but again, just moving sideways after last week's push, new all-time high, but the Qs could be ready to go again next week. And then if we look over here at IWM, again, we're just seeing these indecision candles, spinning top doji type candles. But IWM has finally got above all of its moving averages. And so it does have a decently clear path back up to its all-time high at 245.13. So we're going to want to watch that. And you can see that the volume's been pretty steady. We had an uptick in the bullish volume this week. So keep an eye on IWM. You do have this thick volume node here that we have to watch. But if it could break through that, you can see that there's just thin volume up above. So IWM is definitely one we want to watch. Heading over to the Dow Jones Industrial, we have an inside candle here. Pressure is building very close to that all-time high. Lots of support below us here. You would think that the Dow Jones is going to make an all-time high before it calms down. So just want to keep that on your radar. We're not overbought here. Decent volume. And so really just looking at the broader indices, it looks like things are set up to continue higher. But again, we have these inflation reports coming in. We have big earnings. And so that's being reflected in the candles that we're seeing with these dojis, with the spinning tops. And so we'll see a decision made next week with all the data that we're going to get. And then I always like to take a look at what's happening with Bitcoin. What a monster move. We got above this upper trend line resistance that I was watching for quite some time. Broke through. We actually made a brand new all-time high. Bitcoin has been so strong. $118,900.54. What a move on this guy. And my price target has been 125K by the end of the year. It looks like we can hit that sooner rather than later. We did see the dollar get a little bit of a bounce on Friday. And if we take a look at the 10-year treasury, you can see that we did get a little bit of green come in this week, really the last 2 weeks, but it's essentially been sideways since April, just stuck in a range. And when you think about Jem Carson's call that the 10-year is going to get up to 6% because of the deficit, that's going to put pressure on stocks if that happens. So keep an eye on the 10-year. And then if we take a look at the VIX, again, just hanging out down here on that 100 simple moving average on the weekly. If we are going to get a blow off top, we'll see this thing tumble a little bit. If you look back at that pump that we had during the election, you did have a dump into December where the VIX was really low. Let's see if we get something like that in the coming weeks. We get the blow off top and then things calm down. So again, really, this week is all about data, the CPI, the PPI, retail sales, big bank earnings, Netflix earnings. All those things are going to factor into where we head next. But we have to keep in mind the seasonality component, where the end of July, typically we see some selling come in. August is particularly weak. September is particularly weak. October is typically when the bottom comes in, buyers step in at the end of the month, setting up for the best 6 months in the market. So just keep that in mind. And don't forget, we have to keep in mind tariffs, because obviously anytime this administration, President Trump, talks about tariffs, we're putting a tariff on this country, an additional tariff here, that does put downward pressure on the market. So that can throw some things off. There were rumors that were being discussed about Jerome Powell potentially resigning his post as Fed chair. Pay attention to that. Let's see if that picks up steam. I'm not sure what type of impact that would have on the market. Pay attention if we start seeing some trade deals get announced, because it's June 12th when I'm recording this. We have 19 days to go in this month before August 1st. That's when the tariffs are supposed to take effect. So you would think if these deals are going to be done, they've got to start being announced here soon. Pay attention. Really, lots of question marks heading into this week. I would wait for the data to dictate your direction, because we just don't know where things are going to head until we get that clarification. So that's a look at the broader markets. Let's jump into some of the individual tickers here. I'm just going to go through these. Coinbase continuing to make a strong move, getting back up there near its all-time highs. Again, we're on weekly charts here today, and you can see that all-time high up there at 429.14. Another strong candle that came in here. Decent volume. There's not a lot here on the VRVP holding this thing back. So let's see if Bitcoin continues to climb, if that continues to push up Coinbase. And we can see that it's a bit overbought on the RSI, but as you can see, it could linger up here for some time. Marathon Digital Holdings, I talked about this inverted head and shoulders that you could see here on the daily chart that took some time for it to break out. And because it took so long to break out, that there was a lot of pressure building, that the subsequent move to the upside can be a bit prolonged. Now, Mara is not a huge runner. It doesn't make massive moves. So this one is going to take some time to push, but being that it is finally above all of its moving averages, this thing could run. So if you're patient with it and you're in a swing, you potentially could see this thing get up into the 23 to 25 range. And then if it would take out 26, you could see that there's not a lot of volume up there and potentially can take out its most recent high of 30.34, which was back in November during all the election hype. So keep an eye on Marathon Digital Holdings. SMCI is another one. We have some pressure building here. If you come over to the daily chart, you could see that it got a golden cross that occurred back on the 18th of July. But right now where it's stumbling is right here at this 100 simple moving average on the weekly. But you can see thin volume above here. We want to watch this upper wick of this candle from February 24th, the week of February 24th at $56. We'd probably have a little bit of resistance that comes in here, actually a lot, because that's quite a bit of bearish volume. And then if that could be squeezed, the upper wick on this candle from February 18th would be the next point of resistance to 66. So these are the two areas to watch, but SMCI looks like it is so close to breaking out. And then if it was able to get through those two, you have this gap that needs to be filled up here at 86.53, but I do the chart on SMCI. Amazon making a push higher here. We had a Dragonfly doji last week. We continue to push up. We have this gap that needs filled up here, 234 to 235. Not overbought on the weekly. If we go over to the daily, it's not overbought. So there could be some room here for Amazon to push. Apple, this is my pet project here right now. I have a position in Apple and I'm waiting for it to move. Again, I'm protecting and controlling my risk here. But just from the perspective of it being a laggard, everybody just beating it up around the whole AI concept, that it's not innovating in the space, that it's behind. Don't count Apple out. And just like Microsoft, if we come over to the Microsoft chart here, let me pull this up. You can see that Microsoft really just moved sideways for over a year, pulled down to its, I believe that's its 50 on the weekly, and it's 50 on the monthly. Everybody said, oh, Microsoft's dead, they're not innovating, and then look what happened. It just smashed higher, over $500, price upgrades on this one to $600. And so I eventually believe this is going to happen with Apple. I'm not saying it's going to $500. However, I think it can challenge its all-time high up here at 260.61. And I'm going to be looking to capture partial at 268. And I'm committed to this one long term. I'm not looking to get out of this one quickly. This is going to be a 6 to 8 month position for me. And then my ultimate target will be $300. So you can see it's got quite a bit to fight through here. It's got these two major moving averages above it, the 200 SMA on the daily, the 50 SMA on the weekly. But above that, it's free and clear up to challenge its all-time high. So definitely watching Apple. I love the support that was built after it hit this 200 on the weekly. So keep an eye on Apple. The trade desk, if we take a look here, we had this big gap down on earnings back in February. We had a gap up on earnings in May, and it's really just been moving sideways since then. It hasn't hit that recent high, but it is now above the 50 and the 100. We have the 200 EMA here, and we also have the 200 SMA. But again, if it could start creeping through some of these dailies, it has a lot of room. And when you come over to the weekly, you could see that 200 simple moving average on the weekly is what is in its way from then trying to come up and test that 100 SMA on the weekly. So keep an eye on the trade desk. This one looks like it's building some pressure. How about Roku? I want to go to the daily here and point this out, that we did get a golden cross that occurred here on Thursday on the daily, and we nearly touched that 200 SMA on the weekly, got rejected, but this one may have some room to go, and I keep likening this one to Roblox and the push that it's been on. So keep an eye on Roku. This one could get moving, And this is well off of its all-time highs. Look, 492, and I'm not saying it's going to 492, but I am saying that this one could have some room to the upside. Really like this Google chart. If we take a look here, hammerish candle last week, hammerish candle this week. Again, I wouldn't call these perfect hammer candles because of those upper wicks, but there's buying pressure. This one's been beat up for quite some time. Good volume coming in above all of its moving averages. We have the gap to fill up here to 204.25, and we have the all-time high there at 208.64. This is one I'll be watching for some day trades on Monday. NVDA, new all-time highs, finally broke out of this resistance range, and this thing looks like it wants to keep going. It's not overbought on the weekly, and you could see that when it's got significant pullbacks, when it's been on an upside run, it has got overbought, so there's still some room here. And watch those ASML earnings. If they are positive, you'll see NVIDIA go even higher. Tesla, we have an upper trend line resistance that's been established here on the weekly chart that I'm watching. And really, this thing is just in the forest of moving averages, just squeezed in there. And this is going to take some news coming, some catalyst, which, oh yeah, earnings is coming up here on July 23rd. And that's going to determine where it goes. So a poor earnings, which more than likely it's going to be, and probably a lot of future dated optimism from Musk saying, oh, this is what's coming. We're excited about Optimus. This is going to happen with autonomous driving. It's probably going to be more promises and not a lot of practicalities, concrete pieces, and more than likely as a result of that, we're going to head lower, but who knows? It's Tesla. We do have a gap to fill down here at between 242 and 243. So just keep an eye. There's a move that's coming here. I don't know which direction. We'll get more clarity, but this one, I'm staying away from it right now, just for me. Microsoft, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green weeks in a row. Beastly. Just starting to get overbought here on the weekly. You would think that this one would pull back at some time, and then you see a rotation into something like an Apple or a Google. But congrats to all the Microsoft bulls out there who have played this one all the way on the upside. And then Netflix, I'm going to have a video coming out on Netflix to preview their earnings, so stay tuned for that. But we've had 2 red weeks, which that hasn't happened for Netflix. We'd have to go back to March, and that's right before it started this push higher. So does this continue to sell down into earnings and we get another gap up? Stay tuned for that preview video to get an idea of where I see that one going. And then we take a look at Meta. Yes, this is a double top on the weekly, but the likelihood this is going to break down here and get below 479, there would have to be some type of calamity, catastrophe in the market where everything comes down if this were to play out. So I don't see that as likely. In fact, if you look here, this is a lower high, higher high double top. So I think if anything, this comes down, retests the 10 and pushes back up. And oh yeah, we do have earnings coming up on July 30th for Meta. And then just some other tickers that I want to bring up here. I really do the Moderna chart, mRNA. If we're looking at the weekly here, we could see that we are above the 100 for the 100 simple moving average on the daily for the first time in a long time. Uptick in volume. Next point of resistance is going to be that 200 SMA on the daily, $38. And then you have the 50 on the weekly at 43. And then above that, you could ride this thing to 74.33. So watch this one. This one's a mover. I called this one out last week, and I didn't get in on it. I am continuing to watch this one because I do think this has some really good opportunity to the upside. Palantir, probably going to make a new all-time high. We've just been moving sideways on that one here recently. Roblox just continues to be a beast. Earnings is coming up on the 31st of July for them. And we'll see what the impact of this grow a garden craze is going to have on this company. It's more than likely going to beat the Wall Street expectations. It's probably going to increase their forward guidance. So this could be one on earnings where even though it's extended, it could smash higher. So I am looking at some out of the money calls for this. It'd be nice to get a little bit of a pullback heading into earnings, which is going to be on July 31st. That would be nice. But I think there's some really good opportunity here on Roblox. Again, even though it is as high as it's been. Adobe, I'm waiting for Adobe. I'm not ready to do anything here yet. I am looking at this trend line support that was established back in 2018. in software really has been struggling, but if I can come down and test this trend line support 327, 325, I'd be interested here. I am watching this one, but I'm not ready to deploy any capital yet, but I do like it. AMD, I was pointing out how the candle pattern that we have right now over the last 3 weeks is very similar to what we had right here back in January of 2024 before it went on a run and made new all-time highs. So keep an eye on AMD here. And again, I'll reference ASML that's reporting its earnings this week, could send chips. Keep an eye on AMD. I'm a horrible AMD trader, not touching this one, but I did want to share this chart. All right, let's just keep rolling through here. I got a couple more I want to go over. HIMS. So looks like we had a bit of a double top here. We came down, we retested the neckline, and we're just sitting here on this 20 EMA weekly. And should that give out, we could see this thing come down and test that $40 range again. But this hammerish candle that we have here, there's quite a bit of bull volume. You would think that this would be protected. But if the bears can close below this and squeeze these bulls, this could drop down to $27. So I'm not looking to play HIMS to the upside right now. I think there could be some weakness here, but the line in the sand that the bears would have to take out would be this lower wick right there. So just keep an eye on that. Robinhood, beast. When is this thing going to slow down? You nearly have tweezer tops here. You didn't fully get them, but this thing just keeps running up. And it is overbought now here on the weekly. And you can see when it got up into extreme overbought levels here back in February, it did correct pretty significantly. Let's see if that's coming here soon on Robinhood. And let's see if there are any others I want to take a look at. Let's take a look at SoundHound. So SoundHound, inverted head and shoulders was showing up on the daily. You can even see it here a bit on the weekly. And we did fill that gap here. Nice volume. That's where it got rejected. And it is above all of its moving averages. So if I come over here to the daily, there's nothing above it. You pushed up here, retested into the 10. So what's going to be important is if this volume serves as a launching board and it starts to push up and maybe challenge for $16. UNH, this is a big fan favorite out there. Everybody loves UNH. I think it's a significant deal here, especially after these big gap downs that it had. But to me, this just looks like it's a bear flag. It's just sitting there waiting. We do have a lot of volume here on the VRVP, but I think we've got one more leg down here on this one. We do have earnings coming up on the 29th of July. I still have my buy area here marked out at 188.06. I'll be waiting to see what that one does, but to me, this looks like it wants to come a little bit lower before it's all said and done with. And then ExxonMobil, I'm going to come over here to the weekly. We have this upper trend line resistance up that started back at its all-time high in October of last year. It looks like it's getting ready to test that again. It's been rejected 1, 2, 3, and we'll see what it's going to do the fourth time that it gets back up there. Lots of volume here. If it gets rejected, more than likely it'll come back down and retest this weekly. And until oil gets going overall again, it's probably just going to continue to bump its head off of that upper resistance area. Again, not doing a live stream this week because I will be on the road. I wish you the best trading week. Best of luck out there. Again, I'm watching Google very closely. I feel like that has a nice setup for this week. Oh, one last one. So Visa, this is one I looked at last week. I really like the setup, and I was anticipating a gap up off of the candle that we had last week. That did not happen. We actually got a nice little pullback from this push that it got on Monday, and we came down about 4.25%. But I still do like this chart. I like the fact that it's sitting right there on that 100 simple day moving average. Quite a bit of volume up here, but we are making higher lows. So I'm going to continue to watch Visa to see if this one comes through, and I do really like this chart. So there you have it, my market review preview. Again, a lot of uncertainty out there. The charts look bullish. There are lots of opportunities, but it's all going to be data dependent. Make sure you're paying attention to what is being reported in terms of the CPI report. PPI. Make sure that you're staying on top of that. Stay on top of any tariff news that's coming out, the Jerome Powell rumors about him resigning, and pay attention to the big bank earnings that are going to start on the 16th, and we'll get them, or excuse me, the 15th and the 16th, and then Netflix earnings on the 17th. It's shaping up to be one fun trading week. I can't wait. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you back here for another market review and preview. Thanks, everyone.